Hi everyone and welcome to the Data Privacy Act of 2012 Awareness. I am Attorney Maria Penelope T. Santiago, Head of the Legal Unit and the Designated Data Privacy Officer of this hospital. Because the DPA is a broad topic, I've chosen specific topics under the law to somehow guide you on one of the most important responsibilities we carry as part of this hospital: protecting the personal and sensitive personal information of our coworkers and especially of our patients. My discussion will serve only as a brief overview. The common impression is that the Data Privacy Act protects the right to privacy. While that is generally true, it is not entirely accurate because the data privacy only protects a specific aspect of the right to privacy. The simplest and most cited definition of the right to privacy is the right to be let alone. The DPA was enacted specifically to protect one important aspect of privacy: the right to informational privacy. Informational privacy is the right of individuals to control information about themselves. Because the law specifically refers to individuals, the right and protection under the DPA apply only to and may be invoked only by natural persons. Juridical persons like partnerships and corporations cannot claim protection for their personal information under DPA. Thus, the DPA protects the informational privacy of individuals. This is evident in its declared policy. The DPA seeks to protect the right to privacy of communication while ensuring the free flow of information to promote innovation and growth. How does the law do this? The DPA defines the rights of data subjects, imposes obligations of those that control and process personal data. The DPA defines the right of data subjects and imposes obligations on those that control and process personal data, and provides penalties for violations of those rights and obligations. In other words, the DPA seeks to balance the processing of personal data with the protection and data subjects' rights. In essence, the law is a regulatory measure enacted pursuant to the police power of the state. Note that the intention of the law is regulation, meaning control or supervision, not prohibition. The DPA does not prohibit the processing of personal data. It does not say you cannot collect, store, use, or otherwise process personal information. It only requires that if you want to process personal data, you must comply with the obligations under the law, which include respecting and upholding the rights of data subjects. What is processing? Processing is defined as any operation or set of operations performed on personal information. This encompasses the entire life cycle of data processing, including but not limited to collecting, recording, organizing, storing, updating, modifying, retrieving, using, and even erasing or destroying the data. So long as any of these operations are performed on personal information, the activity is considered processing and is regulated by the Data Privacy Act. However, not all processing of data is subject to regulation because the DPA only regulates the processing of personal and sensitive personal information. To name some of the exceptions where the Data Privacy Act does not apply are: number one, details on the position or function of any past or present government officer or employee, such as salary ranges, office addresses, and telephone numbers. Number two, information necessary to carry out the function of public authority, such as the banking regulation or law enforcement. And number three, personal information that processed for research purpose intended for a public benefit, subject to applicable laws or ethical standards. This basically covers research collaborations made by our clinical departments and researches by other institutions within our hospital. So for this, the IRB or the Institutional Review Board ensures we comply with the international ethical standards. And of course, our legal unit sets in to review necessary legal requirements such as execution of the non-disclosure agreement or data sharing agreement as the case may be. Those kinds of information are not protected under the DPA. Again, the DPA does not prohibit but only regulates the processing of information. And to reiterate, it does not cover all kinds of information. The only information subject to regulation under the DPA is personal and sensitive personal information. So what is personal information? Simply put, personal information is any information that can identify an individual. This means the identity of the individual is either apparent, can be reasonably and directly ascertained by the entity holding the information, or can be directly and certainly identified when that information is combined with other information. So as long as you can determine who is being referred to, whether immediately or in combination with other data, that information is considered personal information and is subject to regulation under the DPA. For example, even if you cannot initially identify which Juan de la Cruz is being referred to because it is a common name, that name becomes personal information if you can pinpoint the specific individual by combining it with other details such as age, gender, address, or education. Other examples of personal information include email addresses, phone numbers, and home addresses. Sensitive personal information. The law also regulates the processing of sensitive personal information. In fact, it imposes higher standards for processing this kind of information because it can be used to discriminate against a person. Sensitive personal information includes an individual's race, ethnic origin, marital status, age, color, health, education, sexual life, or religious, philosophical, or political affiliations. Another category covers information issued by government agencies that is peculiar to an individual. This includes social security numbers, tax returns, and licenses, as well as their denials, suspensions, or revocations. All of these fall under sensitive personal information. Information will also be considered sensitive if it is specifically established by an executive order or an act of Congress to be kept classified. It is important to distinguish whether information is personal or sensitive personal information. As I mentioned earlier, the standards of protection are higher for sensitive personal information. Therefore, in cases of violations involving sensitive personal information, the penalties are also higher. But who are required to observe these standards of protection? Who must comply with the obligations imposed by the DPA? Under Section 4, the DPA applies to any natural or juridical person, meaning actual people or entities like partnerships or corporations, as long as they are involved in the processing of personal information, which I already defined earlier. These entities or individuals fall under one of the two categories. They are either personal information controllers, or PICs for short, or personal information processors, or PIPs. A PIC is a person or organization who controls the collection, holding, processing, or use of personal information. However, this does not include those who process personal information for personal, family, or household affairs. So just because you collect and use a friend's phone number does not necessarily make you a PIC if the purpose is purely for personal use. It is when the purposes extend beyond personal or family or household affairs, such as processing for commercial use or other purposes, that the DPA will apply to regulate the processing of that information in order to protect data subject rights. As mentioned, PICs control the processing of personal information. That is why they are called personal information controllers. Because of this control, the term PIC also covers those who instruct others to process personal information on their behalf. Of course, those who merely follow the instructions of the PIC are not PICs, rather, they are PIPs. Specifically, a PIP is any natural or juridical person to whom a PIC outsources the processing of personal information. The PIC asked the PIP, "Can you process this for me?" As mentioned, PIPs perform processing only because they are following the instructions of their PIC under an outsourcing agreement. It is important to distinguish between a PIC and a PIP because the PIC is primarily accountable for complying with the DPA and for protecting the personal data it processes, whether by itself, through its employees, or through its agents, meaning the PIPs under those outsourcing agreements. So whether PIC or PIP, as long as they are engaged in the processing of personal or sensitive personal information, they are required to comply with the obligations imposed by the DPA. Some significant obligations are the following. Number one, adhere to the general data privacy principles. Number two, comply with the criteria for lawful processing. Number three, implement reasonable and appropriate organizational, physical, and technical measures to protect personal information. And number four, respect and uphold the data privacy rights of the data subjects. The first main obligation requires compliance with the general data privacy principles. These principles serve as parameters, limits, or guides for those processing personal data, and they are necessary to establish trust between the entities that process personal data and the data subjects. In general, the data privacy principles are transparency, legitimate purpose, and proportionality. Briefly, the principle of transparency requires fairness and openness in processing. To comply with this principle, the PIC or PIP must make the data subject aware of the nature, purpose, and extent of the processing. This includes disclosing the identity of those doing the processing, the risk and safeguards involved, and the rights of the data subjects and how those rights may be exercised. The point is to ensure that the data subject is informed so they are not unfairly surprised with any aspect of the processing or their personal information. The second principle is legitimate purpose. PIC and PIPs must comply with the criteria for lawful processing. In other words, personal or sensitive personal information may only be processed if such processing is not prohibited by law and if there's a legitimate purpose for conducting it. The most common criterion that allows PICs or PIPs to process personal data is the data subject's consent. This is very common and you see it often whether in person or through online consent forms, where you give your consent to the processing of your personal data. However, consent is not the only basis for processing. In some cases, consent may not even be necessary as long as other criterion exists to justify the processing of personal information. Examples include compliance with a legal obligation, the fulfillment or creation of a contract, protection of the life and health of the data subject, or when necessary to respond to a national emergency, such as the health disclosure form used during the COVID-19 pandemic. Note that the criteria for processing personal information I just mentioned are different from the criteria for processing sensitive personal information. As you recall, the standards are higher for sensitive personal information, especially since this information can be used to discriminate against persons. As for the third principle, we have the principle of proportionality. This requires the personal data shall be processed only if the processing cannot reasonably be done by other means. In other words, processing must be proportional to the purpose of the processing. Specifically, PICs and PIPs must collect only relevant information. They should not collect data that is not needed for the purpose. This is the data minimization aspect of the principle of proportionality. There is another aspect, the storage limitation aspect. This requires PICs and PIPs to store personal information only for as long as necessary to fulfill the purposes for which the information was collected. These principles of transparency, legitimate purpose, and proportionality should not be empty words. The law requires PICs and PIPs to give life to these principles. How? By implementing reasonable and appropriate organizational, physical, and technical measures to ensure the protection of the personal data being processed. What are these? Organizational measures refer to the creation and implementation of policies. These policies should govern data privacy best practices within an organization, including physical and technical security measures that must be complied with by everyone, from the lowest employee up to top executives. One of the most important organizational measures is the appointment of a data privacy officer or data protection officer, a DPO. Physical measures, on the other hand, refer to steps taken to secure the processing of personal data. This includes the design of office space to monitor and limit access to work areas, activity schedules, and other policies that prevent unintended access to or destruction of files and equipment. Examples include secure fireproof file cabinets to protect document in the event of a fire, or barriers to prevent others from viewing personal data displayed on a computer screen. Technical measures refer to security policies that protect computer networks against accidental, unlawful, or unauthorized access or use. Examples include encryption, programs to monitor security breaches, and systems to restore access in case of physical or technical incidents, among other similar measures. Thus, the law requires PICs and PIPs to implement organizational, physical, and technical measures to give life to these general data privacy principles. These general principles go hand in hand with the last obligation we will discuss. PICs and PIPs must respect and uphold the rights of data subjects. As you will discover, the general data privacy principles and the rights of data subjects complement with each other. To make it easier to remember, think of these rights as flowing through each stage of this life cycle processing. In general, the rights of the data subjects are the right to be informed, the right to object, the right to access, the right to rectification or correction, the right to erasure or blocking, the right to data portability, and the right to damages. At the start of life cycle of processing, and in line with the principle of transparency, data subjects have the right to be informed whether personal data about them has been, is being, or will be processed. This includes information on whether automated decision making or profiling is used. This right is most commonly fulfilled through a privacy notice. You may have seen this posted on walls or as a pop-up when you enter a website. That is the privacy data notice of the website. Because the data subject is aware that their personal data is being, has been, or will be processed, they also have, upon demand, the right to reasonable access to information on the personal data being processed. This includes what data is being processed, how and where it was obtained, the purpose and manner of processing, who will receive the data and why, the date of the last access and modification of the data, the period of storage, and the details of the DPO or the PIC or PIP. Of course, this right to access is limited only to the data subject's own information. They cannot access someone else's information. This right to access may also be limited in certain cases, such as when the information is publicly available anyway. In cases of repeated requests, requests that require disproportionate effort to fulfill, or requests that may affect the health and safety of the data subject. Likewise, because the data subject is aware of the processing of their personal information, they also have the right to object to such processing, meaning they can say, no, stop this processing. However, the right to object is only available if the basis for the processing is either consent or legitimate interest. In other words, if processing is based on another criterion, such as compliance with the legal obligation or fulfillment of a contract, then the data subject does not have the right to object. If the data subject has the right to object to the processing, if the data subject has the right to object to the processing, they also have the right to rectification. They can dispute any inaccuracy or error in the personal data and have it corrected within a reasonable time. Of course, not all requests for rectification will be granted. For example, a correction may be denied if it requires a court order or other official process, such as in cases involving a substantial change of name or marital status. Certainly, if the data subject can object and demand correction, they can also demand the right to erasure, withdrawal, blocking, removal, or destruction of their personal data from the filing system of the PIC under certain grounds. These grounds include instances where the data is incomplete, used for unauthorized purposes, or no longer necessary for the purposes for which it was collected. The PIC may also refuse a demand to erasure in certain instances, such as when the information is still necessary to complete the purpose for which it was collected or for other legitimate business purposes, among others. Another right of the data subject applies when data is processed by electronic means and in a structured and commonly used format. Take note, in this case, the data subject has the right to data portability. This means the data subject can obtain a copy that personal data in the same format. Examples of such formats include PDF, XML, or JSON, among others. Note that, as I just mentioned, this right to portability is only available if the processing was done by electronic means and in a structured and commonly used format. Additionally, this right is only available if the processing was based on consent or on a contract. Thus, if the basis for processing is something other than consent or contract, and especially if the processing was not done by electronic means or in a structured or commonly used format, such as when the processing was done through pen and paper, then this right to portability is not available. Through this right, a data subject can be indemnified for damage they may have suffered due to a violation of any of the data subject rights I just mentioned. The data subject may also claim damages in cases of inaccurate, incomplete, outdated, false, unlawfully obtained, or unauthorized use of their personal data. To exercise this right to damages, the data subject may simply file a complaint before the appropriate tribunal. So those are the main obligations under the DPA. Failure to comply with the obligations under the DPA or otherwise violating the provisions is punishable with the corresponding penalties. Some punishable acts include unauthorized processing, access due to negligence, processing for unauthorized purposes, malicious or unauthorized disclosures, intentional data breaches, and concealment of security breaches, among others. To facilitate compliance with the DPA, the NPC or the National Privacy Commission developed what is known as the 5 pillars of compliance, which encompass the basic obligation of PICs and PIPs. These are number 1, the designation of a DPO, number 2, the conduct of a privacy impact assessment or PIA, number 3, maintenance of a privacy management program or privacy manual, number 4, implementation of data privacy and data security measures, and number 5, management of personal data breaches. In our modern digital age, everything is powered by data. Everything is powered by information. Let us work together to protect the privacy, confidentiality, and security of our colleagues and patients. Ang bawat impormasyon na hawak natin ay may kasamang tiwala. Huwag natin itong sirain. Muli, ako si Attorney Maria Penelope T. Santiago. Maraming salamat. And welcome to Jose R. Reyes Memorial Medical Center.